We're human, don't you know? Just like you are. I'm Rachel Woods, HRBP turned HR coach, and in this series, I explore the technicolor spectrum that's life in HR with folk in the know. Those that have been there, bought the t shirt, and are happy to share their experiences for us all to benefit. So grab a cuppa, get comfortable, and we'll crack on. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Templin. You may not have heard of Joe. Joe is a reformed physicist, financial planner, startup founder, and autodidactic polymath, best described as a human Swiss Army knife. And we'll get onto what those things are in a minute. Joe's invested the past 2.5 decades to help others reach their financial potential as planner, trainer, mentor, and creator. And I suspect by now you're wondering, what's that got to do with HR? Well, hang in there. Joe and I got chatting about Lean and Six Sigma and Kaizen. And I know, get to the HR bit. Well, that's exactly what we're going to discuss today after a big fat We're Human welcome to you. Joe, hello.
Rachel, good afternoon over there in the UK.
Fantastic. Lovely, lovely to hear from you. I think you are my first international guest on We're Human. Yeah, everyone else has been in the UK and possibly Ireland.
So I
very
get to be the international man of mystery.
You are the international man of mystery. And before we get going, do explain autodidactic polymath to us.
So I don't use the term Renaissance man because I can't even draw a straight line with a ruler. I did
Okay.
not get the artistic ability from my parents. So that went to my brothers and sisters. But my mom, the nun, yes, my mom was a nun before she became a college educator and had
Wow.
6 kids, was always encouraged us to have a love of learning. As she always said, she quoted the Mark Twain quote, "Never let school interfere with your education." So this is the woman who bought us bug jugs and gave me a magnifying glass and didn't get that upset when I burnt stuff up with it, which led to my career as an optical physicist, and taught us to shoot and to hotwire cars and to distill alcohol and all these sort of crazy different things. And if Google had existed when I was a kid, I'd be in a lot of trouble because I'd be down rabbit holes all the time. When I was 8 years old, I told my mom I wanted to learn everything there was to learn. She pointed to the encyclopedia and she's like, "Right over there, get to work." So I actually literally did read all of them. So I'm a human Swiss Army knife in that I've got all these different tools, all these different experiences that I can bring to the table. So my background, I actually started studying communication early on at Hopkins. Then I went and I was an applied physicist. I did research for the government. I went into finance, built my financial planning career, which led to understanding performance and sales psychology. Along the way, I was doing martial arts, ended up becoming an international championship, getting my master rank, which led to a lot of stuff around performance, psychology, and pushing human limits. Started ultra running actually, which led to an entirely different area. So I've done and studied lots of different things. And it's not because there was somebody saying, you need to learn this. Yes, that's why I ended up studying investments and various components of it for work. Yeah, that's why I took various courses, but it opened doors and it's like, oh, this is cool. And this relates to this in some capacity. So an example that I always use is things that I learned as a cellist from Herr Doblin on phrasing in music. Instead of like dot, 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 it's like da, 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 da. No, I can't sing, so I'm not going to. But that
you're the first one to do that as well.
That translates into martial arts because it's not like a metronome of doing the techniques. There's a natural ebb and flow of it, and then you take those concepts and you can apply it to communication theory. You can apply it to development of an organization. Actually has a lot of those same ebb and flows, which goes back to music, which actually is very similar to what I had growing up on the farm with the cycle of the days and seasons. And so being able to draw concepts from one area to another area allows us to be able to communicate on a different level and inspire on a different level, but also allows us to understand and be understood.
Yeah, that's really great. And it all sounds like a really healthy version of shiny thing syndrome, where you get distracted by something. Oh, I'm going to follow that one down there. But then finding the learnings and the similarities, all the parallels that cross over between
I am
seemingly
ADHD,
non-related.
so my other computer in the other room literally has 20 different tabs open right now, but I turned off the circus music. But one of the things is having metacognitive awareness of understanding that I am like this, and so how do I utilize it to best benefit?
Yeah.
But the shiny thing syndrome, you're correct. One of the things that my father taught me years and years ago is in any situation, look for the pearl. Look for the pearl of wisdom, or I call them the pearl of excellence. So it doesn't matter if it's a class that you take or a podcast that you listen to, like here. So hopefully I can give a pearl to your listeners today, or an interaction or a training session. If you can extract one thing from that that adds value to you, that you can utilize, you can then string them together and ultimately have a very rich life.
Yeah, I like that. I do like that. So what I ask all my guests, and I've asked everyone so far, is what brought them to HR. And obviously your experience is vast in all sorts of different areas. But you did have an involvement with HR for a while, didn't you? Or you've been in kind of an HR space.
So
Tell me about how
when
that
I
kind of happened,
was
how that came
building my
about.
financial services career, I was not only building my own personal business, but I was building the agency. So I was recruiting, developing, training, and supervising new financial advisors, whether they were college advisors or full-time people. And so one of the things that I always loved about that was training and developing them. And it was maybe an outgrowth of my mom being a teacher, or the way that I approach martial arts is having a very hands-on, interactive, developmental approach to it. So and this helps now that I'm a parent, trying to make sure that they're getting the lessons as opposed to just following with rote memorization or doing it because I'm the father and I said so. In an organization, especially a volunteer organization, like I do a lot of work with, that doesn't work. So you need to get them to buy into the mission, to understand what you're trying to accomplish. As one of my friends who's a retired Navy captain talked about on a discussion last week, it's having the commander's intent. What is the goal of the organization? What are we trying to do? And so when you can have that and then blend it with a deep interest in that individual, that's where you can have the balance so that they can understand how they're contributing to the organization, how the organization can help them grow and develop as an individual and a long-range professional, and having that focus on developing the human resource, that individual person, and making them the best that they can possibly be, and how they can align with the organizational mission is how you get maximum production of whatever capacity you're trying to manage, that individual and that unit. But that's also sustainable. It is growable. It is something that you can recruit to from a culture point of view. And the culture, if you've got a culture of growth and you're bringing in people with growth mindsets and focusing on them as individuals, you can then have it be self-policing and reinforcing and growing. And people will surprise you with how awesome they can actually be.
Yeah, I know. I like that.
So that's my approach to HR. And, I'm not, I'm probably an HR nightmare in a lot of ways because I say what I mean. So I'm not going to have a lot of what Lang calls the false self around it. I'm not going to sugarcoat things. I have tough love. And so one of the issues that I've had in the past is when I care about somebody's future more than they do, that doesn't work.
Yeah, and I can see that. That's got to be a frustration in some ways, and for a lot of HR professionals, actually, you would see that as well. Is you've absolute belief in somebody's potential and capability, and yet they either don't see it or they do see it, but actually and I guess that their ambitions is mismatched to what you want them to be through. And again, it's their ambitions, right? So
right, and then there's a lot of Michelangelo phenomenon here, where we see inside them their potential, but it also comes down to difference in conscientiousness level.
Yeah.
So, if you look at big 5 personality traits, people, I've got an insane work ethic from growing up on the farm. As some of my former business partners have said, I'm not you, Joe. I don't want to work that hard. I'm
I
not
don't want
going
to get
run
up that
ultra
early.
Yeah, I'm not getting up that early. I'm not staying
I
that
don't want to
late.
run ultra marathons.
Exactly. And that's something that's taken me a long time to, deal with, because as my kids tell me they're not me either, and I need to remember that.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to see what they could become, but within the constraints, whether it is externally imposed or their own internal imposed constraints of, you know what, I'm not working after 5 p.m. or I'm not willing to make this sacrifice, or I only want this. And then be able to operate within that, but get them to understand too, because if they then want to expand their capabilities, their horizons, their work ethic, what have you, which takes time. I mean, you don't start running an ultra marathon day one, you start with a 5K, you build up over years. Same thing with the work environment. So if they can build that up, then they can unlock that potential that we're seeing in them. But it's a them issue. It's not an us issue.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So as we got talking earlier, and I think people are going, yeah, but come on, you mentioned Lean and Six Sigma and Kaizen and all this stuff. And so how does a concept that's so often applied to manufacturing, industrial activity, what does that have to do with the work of HR?
Actually, it's got everything to do with the work of HR. And unfortunately, people don't see this because of the siloing that we have. Finance is over here, and manufacturing is over here, and HR is over here. And you know what? But life, especially in a startup world, is cross-functional in a lot of ways. And we need to be cross-functional in everything that we do, because guess what? You're not just going to do English or just do mathematics. It is bleeding into these other areas and involves people. So the concept of Kaizen is really a mindset that then they put processes around to help formalize and improve, which is a very Kaizen sort of approach, actually. They applied Kaizen to Kaizen. And it is all about continuous improvement. And it's not about the huge radical shift, because when the Japanese manufacturing capability was completely destroyed after World War II, they had old machines that were getting, secondhand, third-hand, fifth-hand stuff, so they had to do the best with what they had, which this is one concept of it. Do the best with what you have. So if you're having a bad day emotionally, or some people have like some biochemical imbalances and everything, so do the best that you can that particular day. So if it's just getting up and taking a shower, good. If it's eating a Pop-Tart as opposed to eating, fruits and vegetables and well balanced, guess what? That's better than eating nothing. Okay. If it's reading for 5 minutes while you're in the bathroom, and the kids are, beating on the door, that's better than not reading at all. And, yes, this is speaking a little bit to the new parents out there, but entrepreneurs deal with this. We all have these same sort of situations where you do the best that you can with what you have, and then you try and get a little bit better. So when the big champion really for Kaizen was Toyota, when they first came to the United States as a car manufacturer. And when they entered the US market, they sucked. Their cars were horrible. They broke down constantly. They were not worth it. But they had applied Kaizen, where every single person on the line, every single person in the entire organization, up to the individual in the corner office or the janitor, could stop things and make a micro improvement.
Right.
Okay?
So
Whether
all lots of micro
tool,
improvements lead to big gains, right?
Right. But what happens is it adds up. It's a little bit here, it's a little bit here. And that's why the cover of my book has that cool growth curve, because it doesn't matter if it's you practicing an instrument for a half hour a day. When you start, you're going to suck. You're going to sound like you're strangling a cat.
Yep.
But after a year, you're going to be, acceptable. And after a second year of practicing every single day for a half hour doing that basic stuff, you're going to actually be able to perform in like a small thing. And then you keep it up and you keep it up, and eventually you're pretty good. Same thing with learning a skill, martial arts, baking, doing mathematics. Nobody starts doing advanced calculus. We start with 1 + 1 = 2, and we build up from it. Same thing with ultra marathon, same things with martial arts, everything. So within people's careers, people get promoted into a position. Guess what? They're not ready for it. They're never ready. That's part
No,
of the
they
idea.
are.
But they have the mindset, hopefully. They've got the capability. And so how do we go from not being ready to being ready? Well, are you going to flip a switch or they're going to plug it into your head like the Matrix and download it and you're like, I know Kung Fu? No, it's going to work. And every day trying to get better. And so this is where HR needs to step on in and say, okay, we know you're not ready yet for this. This is how we get you ready. Okay, here's your plan for improvement for yourself. And instead of meeting with them once a year to evaluate, oh, you did horrible here, and great on this, yay, wonderful. It needs to be very short cycle feedback loops, like weekly, daily even. I've got people that I'm coaching where they have to do one thing every single day to build their business. And for someone, that one thing could take 10 minutes, but they've got a lot of anxiety around doing it. For other people, it'll take a half hour, other people, because it's all personalized to them. But what they do is they text me when they accomplish it.
Yeah. I
And
like
after
that.
3 or 4 days, they're like, wow, this is cool. And, I'll give them, some cool little meme or a little GIF where, I'm celebrating or whatever. But they get that feedback loop of, I'm doing the right thing.
That sense of achievement,
just like when our little kids are walking, you're like, good job, buddy, good job.
And if you fall over, we say, dear, pat you on the bottom and send you off again.
Right.
Obviously not in the office. We don't do that in the office.
We give them a quick little swat on the bottom. Don't do that. And they
not
stop.
in the office, but yes.
Okay. So we're not allowed to swat them in HR. I mean,
it's frowned upon, I believe.
Frowned upon. That's one of the advantages of martial arts.
Yeah.
Is, if you do something wrong, it's painful, and you learn really quickly.
Yeah,
but having those shorter micro feedback loops combined with the expectation of this is what we want to do, and having the vision of this is where we're going, that is the critical components for success overall for the individual. And if you've got proper communication among the individuals, that's how you build an organization.
Yeah. Do you know, actually, you just reminded me of something. I was on LinkedIn this morning and a connection of mine shared something on nudge theory. And I'm just seeing how to overlay that with this. We're talking about the continuous improvement, little things each day to improve. It's not great big things, they're little achievable things. But at the same time, we're talking about behavioral change, aren't you? You're talking about making new habits, creating habits that will get you further. And there's continuous improvement in that as well. You're overlaying it not just procedurally, but psychologically. And this nudge piece, how do you make those habits easier? Sort of putting the fruit at eye level so that it's easier to grab, putting one bin in the office far away so everybody has to get up and move to use the bin. And it has to be transparent, it has to be easy and optional, but at the same time, it has to be something that encourages folk to do the desired behavior, like get up and move around.
And as James Clear talks about, it's the smallest possible change that is sustainable. And let's talk about this. So let's say that you take the stairs instead of taking the lift, as you say, over there, or the elevator over here. And you do that and you park your car 20, 30 feet further away.
Yeah, or you get off the bus one stop early, or
and you decide that every hour or so I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk around the office once. Okay, that is incredibly little, and you cut back on the sugar in your tea. Instead of taking 3 lumps, you take 2. So you're still getting your sugar fix. Or I drink my coffee black, so it's a little bit different. But these tiny little things, well, that can add up to 100 calories a day.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't seem like very much. 100 calories a day over a year is 10 pounds.
Yeah, and like you say, it doesn't feel like you're making massive sacrifices, but you're making
because you're not. Because massive sacrifices require effort. People are lazy. Remember this.
And they're painful. They're difficult. They're hard. We don't want to do it.
but we're lazy because we've evolved this way. Calories used to be incredibly expensive. We had to go out and like slay mammoths, or pick little grains of wheat.
Oh, on your feet all day just to earn a meal, right? So
exactly. And so we developed all of these mechanisms to use as little energy as possible in a lot of ways. And the brain is an energy hog. The brain makes up about 5% of the body mass, but uses 20% of the energy. So that's why we have rules of thumb or heuristics. We have shortcuts. We're like this to this because that is the quickest, easiest thing. And Kahneman talks about this in Thinking Fast and Slow. So what we need to do is we need to actually stop spend a couple of minutes, look at the situation and analyze it. So yes, this takes energy, but then develop a better procedure or a quicker way of doing things, more efficient. That's why we have checklists and things like this, because yeah, it takes more time to sit there and look at the process and put together the checklist, but then you can onboard somebody like this and have them up to speed. And so it shortens your cycle time to get somebody successful. And it allows you to be able to have somebody with a lower skill set. If you look at what Michael Gerber talks about, to be able to execute on that. And that then frees up other resources. So yeah, it's a little bit of investment up front, but it's a huge savings long range. And what this does is then that individual coming on in can be productive more quickly. They feel better. They, are accomplishing stuff, which then gives them that positive feedback loop. And because they've got this way that is very efficient of taking care of this component, maybe that saves 15 minutes a week. That 15 minutes a week, is that being spent on developing them? Is that being spent or really invested properly back into the individual? And if it is, then this is how you get those continuous improvements and be able to ultimately be doing some pretty awesome stuff. And this is the same approach that I've taken in terms of my own businesses. Over time, the processes have gotten a little bit more efficient. So I've realized doing this thing here doesn't add any value, so I'm cutting it out. This person is not helping, so we either coach them up or coach them out or remove them from your life if they're a psychic vampire. And by doing these little things, you get to the point where you're this much more effective, not necessarily efficient, but effective. Effective is getting the right stuff done.
Yeah, and ultimately efficiency is
being
always
effective is sitting there having a cup of tea with somebody instead of just sending them an email, because that cup of tea is worth hundreds of extra hours. An example that I use is in my old office during the summer, the ice cream truck would come around Thursday afternoons, roughly 1 o'clock.
And do they play music?
Oh, of course, Mr.
They are like, it's I'm just checking the across international boundaries. They do play a really annoying jingly tune, right?
It's code.
Okay.
So they would come around 1 o'clock on Thursdays, and my staff knew that if we had accomplished everything that we were supposed to, that the office would then be closed for the next half hour. We're all going down and having ice cream.
Brilliant.
Okay, that half hour and $20-30 for ice cream, that investment led to such productivity growth, such attention to improving processes and making things better. And then when we're sitting there and we're having ice cream and we're laughing at each other and telling jokes and having fun with each other and bonding, it allowed us to, during the difficult times, have those social reserves that we could draw from.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? That's such an effective, like I say, a micro action that adds to team building, and so much better than taking teams out and making them sort of have forced fun, as quite often these team building things are. But I'm just thinking about how I am reminded of Pavlov's dogs with the ice cream truck, but ultimately, and I also want ice cream now, but I'm just thinking, I'm working at the moment.
You sure you're not Canadian?
I like ice cream.
Cold country Canadians eat more ice cream than anybody on the planet.
Cold country doesn't stop you.
Middle of the winter, they eat it to warm up.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Ice cream's good all year round. I'm just thinking, actually, I'm working with a lot of learners at the moment. I think there's an awful lot of people that I'm talking to right now who are coming back to a more academic learning process, and it's new for them. They've got a full-time job, and they're taking on this. The UK's got a thing called modern apprenticeships, and they can be at any level. So I've got heads of departments and GMs and senior level leaders going through this pseudo sort of MBA style program effectively. But of course, they probably, if they did a degree, it was donkey's years ago. It was a very long time ago, and they're moving into this habit of learning and thankfully, because it's vocational, it should map into their job, and an awful lot of what they're doing is being applied with what they have to do anyway, and so therefore it is these improvements they can do over time. But I'm just thinking about what you're saying about these little micro steps in order to get them into the habit of doing the learning, writing the summary, noticing the potential evidence as well as gathering it, and getting in the habit of squirreling that away to bring it up at a later date once we get to those particular modules. And I'm thinking about, well, how I can encourage them and enable them. I'm going to tell them to listen to this for a start, but to get into those micro habits to help, again, make it easy. How can you
Make it
make this,
fun.
make it
That's one of the other
fun,
things. So with
reward
my Cub
yourself?
Scouts, we're trying to
Yeah.
make everything fun for them.
Mm.
So whenever there's a teaching moment, a learning lesson, I take it and I try and apply it. Same thing that I do with my kids. So like my one autistic son had an issue the other day. And so what did we do? We talked about it. We broke it down. I invested the time right then instead of saying, oh, I'll leave this for the performance review next Friday.
Exactly.
No, you take the time right then when the emotions are still high. And with him, it was breaking down the emotions, making sure they understood. He's not angry at you. He's angry at the bad information that you had. Okay. And so, tone and things like that. But by spending the couple of minutes then, it'll allow the thing to not cascade poorly. So managers need to stop and catch people not just doing stuff wrong, but also doing stuff right, by the way. So when I caught my 15-year-old doing something well, and because he was doing the dishes and he didn't even have to, I'm like, buddy, thank you, good job. I noticed that you're doing this even though you didn't have to. That means a lot. And his brother, who's in the other room, who's supposed to be doing the dishes, heard it. So I don't know if it had impact on the one who was supposed to be doing the dishes, but the one who was actually doing the dishes understands that, hey, I'm not just here to be the bad guy. When you're doing something right, I'm going to hold it on up. And so having those micro celebrations, those micro learning incidents, those micro, moments, again, breaking it down to little pearls or, grains of gold, essentially. Finding them and pointing them out is a way to culturally move an individual and organizations forward towards those goals too.
Yeah, and that's great. And I was thinking about your example with your son and helping him spend time in that discomfort, sitting with the discomfort and understanding it and understanding what he's upset at, as opposed to who or where it's coming from, and that self-awareness or that ability to pause and not try and escape the feeling, but to
because
actually
we all get that
have a dialogue with it.
People want to fight or flee, or they want to run away from it instead of stopping, pausing, and looking at it and saying, what's going on here and why. And if you can start having that emotional and intellectual disconnect of, okay, why did this happen and all that, that's where you get these positive feedback loops. That's where you get the learning. And it also makes us be able to have better control of ourselves. Because we're going to have that emotional reaction if somebody does something stupid or insults us or disappoints us. But if we can not be overwhelmed by it, it allows us to make better decisions. And as you move up into positions where there's more dependent on your actions, I mean, we've all seen the boss or the CEO who the smallest thing flies off the handle, and that's really bad for the organization. So what should have happened along the way is when they were a brand new individual, somebody should have been giving them the feedback. So instead of them developing this really obnoxious and larger than life habit, if it was addressed early on, it would be a micro change. Hey, you did this. This is not great. I want to
catch yourself early.
And giving them that attention when it's small before it becomes a huge flaw. And because I've seen people who are senior level officers in military and in organizations who have these issues because nobody addressed it along the path, and ultimately it ends up blowing up either their career or the organization.
Yeah, it's like hair trigger temper, isn't it? Or reaction. Like you say, it's not understood, it's reacting versus responding. And that's the big difference. Is the buying yourself time to form a response rather than having that emotional reaction, which is rarely healthy or helpful unless you're incredibly disciplined and well versed in responding quickly. But yeah, just thinking about that and what that does for folks, going back to the HR world, in helping others. And quite often HR can, certainly when they're at board level, can be seen as sort of the I suppose the conscience of the organization. Sometimes they are the kind of angel on the shoulder of a possibly slightly hair trigger CEO or GM or something. And what would you say to them in terms of helping influence this sort of thinking at that level, if you were kind of
So
or if
there's
you were a little
two
Worldly
things
Mary.
on that. One, they shouldn't have to be the conscience of the organization because ethics should be baked into the DNA.
Agreed.
As an ethics instructor, the fact that it's not is a function of the organization and society. And so we need to pay much more attention to the ethical components from senior level individuals like in politics or in organizations and being absolutely horrible human beings. Okay? Or they put the almighty dollar ahead of everything else and short term as opposed to sustainable. Okay, because if you make your numbers this quarter, but you're burning everybody out, guess what? You're not going to be doing the best for your shareholders long range. So sustainable growth is critical. The other thing is the human resource is by far the most important resource in any organization. It's not the materials. It's not the manufacturing plant. It's not the capital. It's not the money. It's not the patents. It is the people. Because patents. People come up with the innovations. People do the sales. People do everything. And so if they realize that they invested in the people more and made it so that they had the right people in the organization in the right roles, because I've seen people who have been miscast in roles within organizations. Best example is like in sales organizations. You're a great salesperson. Guess what? We're going to make you, head of sales. And it's different mindset, different skill sets. Okay. I know plenty of people who would rather just, keep being the salesperson because they can make a ton of money and they don't want the responsibility of dealing with others. And there's others who love growing and developing and managing and all that, who are decent salesmen, but not necessarily blowing the doors off. So it's
and yet they will grow decent salesmen.
Allocating that properly.
Yeah, you're right.
And so if you want to take, your number one and, cut the production of the organization, an example that I use is Ted Williams, even though his Red Sox player is one of the greatest baseball players of all time. He was a lousy manager because he didn't realize other people are not Ted Williams. They don't have the natural skill, the mindset, things like that. That's one of the reasons why we see some of the greatest managers and coaches in baseball history are individuals who barely made it to the major leagues, or maybe didn't even, because they understand the struggle. They understand getting the most out of people. They understand team over individual. And those are the same sort of things that we need to be bringing into HR and into the corner office, ultimately, is understanding that we need to develop these people. Because if you are going to have an individual who's brilliant, guess what? If you can make them happy and feel comfortable, whether it's, some of the weird little things, because they might be non-normal, or, they like, I don't, need the big, promotion or things like that. I like this, being able to treat people fairly, but not necessarily equally. Allows for the organization to develop better. So as my kids say, I tell them that, I hate them all equally. But my youngest is like, yes, but you love us all individually in our own way. I'm like, you know what? You're actually really smart, kiddo.
I once said to one of our managers, I came into that, and I can't remember why we got into the conversation. He said, "Oh, I just feel like we're all a pain in your necks," and I think because he'd been in and out of the office a lot, and I actually was quite fond of him. I was quite happy to see him every now and again. We'd like to help him. But I sort of quipped to just, no, we treat everybody with exactly the same level of contempt. Just left it, and they went, no. Of course,
so my kids all know I'm the worst scout leader ever and the worst father ever, and and that's the way that it is. But I will do what it takes to help them develop into the individual that they should be.
Exactly, entirely. So these principles, and certainly we'll get onto your book. Actually, I think where have you seen someone take these principles really well? Have you got a case study or a story you can tell in a few minutes yet? And where you've seen this applied in a really effective way, and what difference it made? What difference did it make?
So one area that I'm seeing this in is a financial services organization that I'm coaching, where we've got people with different constraints. So we've got like one lady, her husband's deployed soldier. So she's basically home alone with 2 kids, versus one of the other guys in the organization who is, he's married, no kids, wife comes from significant financial resources. So these are 2 very different people. Their time constraints are very different. Their goals and objectives are very different. So how I coach and manage them, it has to be very different, because the one needs a little bit more flexibility and understanding and, fitting in, doing the best that you can within these constraints. The other one's like, dude, you have no excuse to not go out and blow the doors off. Okay. So you're doing X and you're happy with X because you're paying your bills and everything. Why don't you want to be up here at Y, where you used to say, oh, because it's hard? Oh, all right. Well, let's look at what you're doing. And it turns out that he's, doing all this stuff to feel good, as opposed to sucking up and doing the hard things, because, maybe because he's never had kids, so he doesn't understand cleaning up puke at 2 o'clock in the morning, or, all the things that once you're a parent, you understand, okay, it's not about me, it's about the organization, the team, taking care of the kids. I have to do this, versus this individual who's still, oh, it's about me. And it's what makes me feel good in the moment, as opposed to what's best for me long range.
Yeah.
The former athlete, you can coach the athlete with tough love, because champions want to be coached hard, versus the person who grew up never having that, never being pushed. You can't push them as hard as the one who are like, dude, suck it up. You need to do X, Y, and Z, and it. This one might need to be brought up to that level. Again, it's that that nonlinear curve on the book, taking more time to get them to that level. And, they've never had a strong figure. They've never had a coach. They've never been pushed in certain ways. They never had to have the discipline of an athlete or a musician. So they are now aware of it. So they don't have the capacity for it yet, but we can draw that out and we can improve them over time.
Yeah, that's small steps, isn't it? And I just say it's being conscientious of individuals' context and experiences today, and like you say, that their readiness for that level of activity or discomfort or
some people are very
in terms of the tasks
comfortable
ahead.
with discomfort. Some people are terrified because they haven't experienced it. Like, oh, it's gonna hurt. Yeah, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a little bit, and you'll get used to it, and then you build that up, just like running long distances or whatever.
That's going back to you saying about practice, isn't it? The universal truth of anything new is, yes, you're going to suck. You're going to need to get used to that. It's going to be hard. You're not going to be good at it. You're going to make mistakes. But you know what? It's in those mistakes, and now you call them pearls. Like for me, they're gold nuggets. That's where the gold nuggets of learning lives. And no learning happens when we're comfortable. We might acquire some knowledge here and there, but the real learning.
Yeah, you need to make a certain number of mistakes to learn and succeed. So, you need to pick up the phone 1,000 times and be told no, 700 times to get to the point where you're good. So you can either do that in a 1 month period, or you can spread it out over a year. If you spread it out over a year, you're not going to hit your quotas. You're going to be gone. If you do it in a month, it's going to hurt. It's going to suck, but you get through it and you get better real quick. You toughen up. So the big thing, though, is we need to remember, and I'm working with a manager that I'm coaching on this, we can't care about them more than they care about them. We can't care about their career. We can't care about their health. We can't care about their growth more than that person cares.
Yeah.
Now, if they care, then I'll care about them more than anybody who's never shared the same last name. I will do everything possible to help them succeed.
Yeah.
But as the great coach Pat Summit said years ago, I will help you, but I will not start your engine.
Yes. Yes. I like that. And then there's a I remember seeing something. It was a chap called Peter Sellers, not the chap that was the Pink Panther, but I think it was a acting coach or something along those lines. He was an artist of some kind, and he was talking very much along these lines. And I think whether he coined the phrase or whether it's the first time I'd heard it, in coaching, certainly in very pure coaching, it's the question of you meet them where they are. You don't drag them to where you are. because they're not ready to go there yet. So you go to them, you meet them where they are, and you help them take those steps to get to where they need to be. And I think it's a really lovely thing to think of with anyone that's moving into coaching, mentoring, any of the supporting
HR
professions. HR,
this
definitely,
is all about
yeah. But HR is so guilty of dragging people to where they think they are, as opposed to going back and going, actually, where are these people right now? Particularly when it comes to difficult messaging, restructures, the really kind of big stuff going on. I guess this kind of really nicely leads me into my next question around, should HR be having a Kaizen revolution, a different way of thinking?
Absolutely, because HR, human resources, these are resources. Resources need to be stored. They need to be shepherded. If you've got a farm, you can't just go and plant the seeds and then come back 3 months later and expect to, have your harvest. You need to pull the weeds out. You need to water it. You need to make sure that they're getting the fertilizer. Certain
Sunshine,
plants need
nutrients,
to have support to grow. So we need to be involved in them and help them. And we need to make sure that they have a vision of what they want to be, who they want to become, what they want to accomplish. And if they can be working towards those visions, with HR being there to support and guide them, and those visions are supportive of the organizational visions, guess what? Those people working toward putting themselves into it and doing everything to grow and develop themselves in alignment with the organization, you're going to get organizational growth and productivity that is absolutely astounding.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm pretty sure none of this is really in the CIPD foundation modules. The CIPD are Chartered Institute for Personnel and Development in the UK. They're the only kind of governing body for HR professionals, basically. So those that have that after their titles have gone through some learning or an experiential an experience assessment in order to get letters after the name that relates to this government governing body. But given that a lot of this stuff, I mean, some of it's covered. I think the principles of support and development is there. The relation to Kaizen and those principles aren't generally taught in that way. And coaching actually isn't heavily kind of covered in it either. And I think, to be fair, coaching, in my sense, there's a conflict of interest between being a coach and being an HR professional, because you need to have a certain level of professional detachment. But if you were to give advice to any future entrants to HR as a profession, what would the first piece be? I know there's probably quite a lot you could give, but what would the most critical piece be?
So somebody just entering HR, have a growth-oriented mindset. Mm-hmm. That is the most critical. Dr. Carol Dweck's analysis says that only about 40% of big people have a growth-oriented mindset. All kids have a growth-oriented mindset. I mean, every kid learns to walk. They fail a gazillion times, and they keep trying because they want to get better. They want to walk. They want to be able to go get the cookie. They want to be able to ride the bike. So we need to keep that mindset going as we're adults. So if you're entering into HR, you need to have a growth-oriented mindset so that you're going to continue to grow and you're going to radiate that to the people around you, because having other people around you wanting to get better, wanting to improve, is going to be directly contributing to the bottom line of the organization. It's cultural, it's in the DNA of having that mindset. So that's the first thing. Second thing is have a fascination with the people.
Yeah.
Okay. Care about them as individuals as you care about the organization, but want to know what's going on with them, those sort of things, because people work harder when they know the people around them care. If you're just a number, employee number 1, 2, 3, 4, who cares? But if you're Rachel, who does this and does that, then they feel. So people leave bad managers. People leave organizations where they don't care. There's an example from video games, from like games on the phone and everything. Games that create a chat function and a community that get people socially involved, they become emotionally involved, and they stay in those games for a lot longer period of time. They spend a lot more money and all this. So it literally becomes a part of who they are. So in the commercial organization, in the job, we need to look at doing this too. So work from home is great occasionally. It's a flexible option to be able to accommodate life, but we need to have those actual connections where we can sit down and have a cup of coffee or an adult beverage, or be able to interact with people so that hey, my coworkers' kids' names are X, Y, and Z, and this is what's going on with them and all that, because you're less likely to leave that organization if you've got these emotional ties. You are less likely to slack on your job if you know that you slacking impacts your friend. So those work friendships that get developed. And so HR needs to help foster that and improve that, because people are now becoming ingrained in the organization, not just intellectually, but emotionally. And by doing that, you're going to get better performance on every single metric.
Love it. Love it. Thank you very much. We could go down a lot of rabbit holes from here, I think, particularly on the remote working question, but we won't right now because we were running out of time. Here is the opportunity to really kind of get an idea of where we can connect with you, and also where can we find your book?
So you can find my book in the UK on Amazon.
Oh, Amazon,
so
yeah.
you Kindle or hard copy or soft copy is the best way. You can also connect with me on my website, everyday-excellence.com. That's everyday-excellence.com. I actually recommend people go there because the book's great. If you buy the book, I get to buy beer. I like my beer, right? But the website has so much more. All the podcasts I'm on there, so people will be able to find this one. Every single day, I put up a micro blog, a just quick hit of energy and insight that takes 1 minute to read. There's going to be the TikTok's going to be connected there. There's all these other resources, free resources for people to move along on their own journey of excellence. And so my mission over the next 12 months, Rachel, is actually to help 100 million people get better in some capacity.
Wow. I like that. Okay? Yes.
It's a big, hairy, audacious
big
goal.
mission. I like a big, hairy mission.
Yeah, it's my BHAG, and it motivates me because it's so huge that I have to become more. I have to become better. I have to evolve my thinking and involve different individuals to be able to achieve this, to help these people. But if I can reach and help 100 million people, and they can make slightly better decisions in their life and move slightly ahead, they're going to then influence other individuals too. And this can help offset some of the entropy and chaos that is natural in the world. And so this will turn around and have direct impact to a ton of people. And so that is my goal. So please go to the website, everyday-excellence.com, sign on up for the newsletter, check things out, use it to help yourself grow and develop and move along and become better.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Joe. This has been really, really great, actually. We will make sure that you have all of your links in the show notes. So we'll make sure that's all there so that anyone that wants to get in touch or find that website or get you on LinkedIn or anything along those lines can do so without having to write anything down right now, because some people might be driving while they're listening to this, or cleaning the oven, or doing the things that I do when I'm listening to podcasts, like painting and stuff. And I don't mean interesting arty painting, I mean like the walls and the skirting and all that boring stuff. So if you've enjoyed this, do hit subscribe on whichever platform you have chosen to listen. Of course, you can find all new episodes as they come out on my website. Again, the link will be in the show notes. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming along. This has been an absolutely super chat. There's so many gold nuggets in here. I'm going to struggle, I think, to come up with a title because there's so many possibilities. So thank you. Thank you. It's been an absolute joy talking to you.
Rachel, thank you. Be excellent and grow today.
Great. Thank you very much. Good words from Joe there.